Peter Jackson's Miramar studio complex is the envy of filmmakers around the world and a long way from his early attempts at movie making as a young boy in Pukerua Bay.
I was thinking of ideas that were Hollywood, big budget films, and I had a little Super 8 camera that couldn't shoot sound, and I was trying to do animation when I didn't have a single frame control. I just have to press the trigger for a short burst and get 2 or 3 frames. It was jerky, and I'd be quite disappointed with the results and sort of forget about that particular little movie.
Getting hold of a 16mm Bolex camera allowed Peter Jackson to think of a more ambitious project, and 5 years later, in 1987, he released Bad Taste.
Only somebody like Peter could have put so much work into his first film. He had no money. He was working at the Evening Post newspaper in Wellington. And every weekend they'd shoot a little bit more of his movie because he could just about afford a bit more film. And he'd rope all his mates in because he couldn't afford actors. And the thing was done virtually silent because he couldn't afford sound. And he ended up making this fascinating little splatter movie. And it was a hit. I mean, it couldn't not be a hit because it cost threepence halfpenny to make, but it sold in these little cult sort of slots all around the world.
With a little more splatter under his belt, Peter and his partner Fran Walsh wrote Heavenly Creatures, the story of the Parker Hume murders in Christchurch.
Come on!
After having made all these kind of fun little sort of splattery movies, I mean, they're low-budget kind of gag movies in a lot of ways. Then he made Heavenly Creatures, and Heavenly Creatures lifted him up a notch. He was more than a notch, about 6 notches. Suddenly it's a great little independent film. It benefited enormously from a good script. It benefited enormously because it was well shot, well art directed, but it also had a very sure hand on the tiller. You suddenly realised that Peter Jackson wasn't just a gag director, he was the real thing.
By now, Hollywood was showing interest, and the Jackson-Walsh partnership was moving towards the biggest movie project of all time. The Lord of the Rings trilogy has meant that Peter Jackson can now call the shots in a way he could only dream about as a boy in Pukerua Bay, and he is now regarded as one of the most powerful people in Hollywood.
He's on that level because he insists on being on that level. He was a mogul. He was a mogul before he had any money, but he was a mogul. He's Alfred Hitchcock, he's George Lucas, he's Steven Spielberg, he's Peter Jackson. And he's doing it for Miramar.
Part of me says that Peter Jackson deserves whatever high ranking he gets. What he did was just phenomenal. The sheer amount of work in what he's done is hard to believe.
Lord of the Rings, that's the Everest of filmmaking.
Peter Jackson is clearly one of the most powerful people in Hollywood now, and he's made a huge contribution locally, but also to the way in which the world regards New Zealand.